Hi, and welcome to video number 3 in Understanding Narcissism. But this video is going to be a bit different. This is going to be my testimony of how God rescued me from narcissistic ruins. Now, I'm a firm believer in we overcoming by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony, because the enemy loves for us to be silenced. He loves for us to be muzzled. He loves for us to walk in shame. He loves for us to be isolated and feel so alone. But as we speak out loud, about what God has done for us, first of all, it gives glory to God and it makes the enemy tremble. And thirdly, it sets others free, because many times we are going through different situations and we feel as though we are the only people going through it until we hear somebody speak. So there's a scripture, 2 Corinthians 1, 3, and 4, that tells us the same comfort that God has given us in our tribulation, we're going to be able to comfort those who are in any type of trouble, who may be in the same situations, with the same type of comfort, the inspiration, the hope that God would have given us. So my hope and prayer is that this testimony inspires someone. This is not to throw anybody under the bus in any type of way. This is not to make myself a victim and somebody else a villain. That's not what it's about. To be quite honest, I had made an interval, I'm not going to share this testimony. God will have to tell me to do it. I was under a lot of shame, to be quite honest. But then when things really got, deep, I'm like, Lord, if you get me out, I am going to testify. So when we make vows to God, we must be very careful, because vows to God are not like vows to man. So here I am. So if you have not watched the previous 2 videos, I invite you to go back and take a look at them. So without further ado, here we go. And this is my first time ever sharing my testimony like this, so please bear with me. So I am Takia, and I am from the island of Barbados. I come from a Christian background for my entire life, and I had a pretty normal, some would say privileged childhood, but I guess that is subjective. But from my earliest memories, I was taught about Jesus, and I was very intrigued with Bible stories, specifically about Jesus. And these stories would really come alive when I would go to Sabbath school, see the felt board activities, hear about how much Jesus loves little children. And, I always heard that Jesus was coming soon. And this is actually a picture of me as a little girl. This book here, I really love this book. I still have it to this day. I like walking around with this book. It had well, obviously for little children, pictures, the story of Jesus, and I just loved this Jesus. I had a childlike imagination. I would think about Jesus getting on a plane and coming to pick me up and taking me to heaven. I didn't know where heaven was, but at that time, I knew about traveling by plane. So, in my mind, Jesus is going to come by plane. So I was excited to go on this trip to heaven with Jesus, because I wanted to sit on his lap. I wanted to get hugs. I wanted to walk around with this Jesus that I would always hear about at church. And I really hoped that he would come quickly. But as the years roll on, I was not a little girl anymore. And, well, Jesus never came. I was disappointed. But despite that, I still got baptized at 12 years old. This time, being a bit older, I had a different type of zeal. But I was still persuaded, this time I'm 12, I'm older, he's going to come really soon. But the zeal didn't last too long, because by the time I was in my teenage years, I struggled with depression. And growing up in the Caribbean, this was taboo. You talk about you sad, you don't feel happy, It's like, well, you got to be depressed about. You got this, you got that. Like, you live a good life. Y'all young people too ungrateful. All these different things. So, I just carried on behind a mask, and there was nothing outwardly that spoke to my emotional state. But even from that young age, I would write in a journal, just trying to get out my emotions. I was also a very highly sensitive person, and that did not help because I was also very misunderstood. I got a lot of negative labels attached to me. Nobody could really, I guess, deal with my emotions. I didn't know properly how to express myself, so I was very misunderstood. I always felt different from everybody else. I had no real emotional connection with my immediate family or my relatives. And there was this desperate desire to be loved and accepted for who I was. But I did have one cousin. I really loved her, and I felt in a sense that she got me, right? So she had seen me at good, bad, in between, different. And I just felt like, we had a connection. And to some extent, I got that love and acceptance in friends. Now, despite, getting baptized, growing up in the church, I did not have a real connection with God. Like, I think I knew that Jesus was God. Yes, I did. But there was always this, okay, Jesus is the Son, but then there's God the Father. And I was terrified of God the Father. I thought that he was like this big tyrant sitting on a throne with this like stick waiting to smack me in my head for any mistake, ready to throw fire on me. And it was like, oh my goodness, I am going to hell. I can't appease this God. I started to hate church, and I could not wait until I was 18. So I did not have to go to church. I could make that choice not to go to church. Also, I was a shy, very timid and shy girl, but very analytical. So I would observe things a lot, and when one-on-one was not equaling to, I had questions. So, the church is not perfect, and I noticed a lot of hypocritical things, and it turned my mind completely from church, not necessarily from God, just from going to church and being around the church people. I really wanted to get out and into better, because if this what church is like, I don't want no parts of it. But still, like, outwardly, I would do the things that were required of me. I would go to church. I would participate in what I needed to participate in. You got the church jargon, don't pat, everything like that. But my heart was not there. And even though I did not leave, like, completely, after a certain age, I think I was about not even 18. Probably like 16, 17. Yeah. Sometimes I would just sleep in. I wouldn't go. After my parents divorced and my mother was not here, like I was not living with my mother. Most definitely, like, not going was a norm, because I didn't have somebody constantly in my ear, like, oh, you need to get up and go to church and all these different things. And when I did go, I used it as like a social. I would go to catch up with friends, and no shame, I would go to eat. So for some reason, food after church on Sabbath was like, it was hitting different. So all in all, church became like a social event for me, because I wasn't holy. In my mind, I could never be holy for this God that has all these high standards. I don't look like the normal Christian. I don't talk like the normal Christian. I don't, dress like the normal Christian at that time. I like my short, tight dresses, like high heels, all of that. And, you'll be chastised for these type of things. So I'm like, look, God is holy. I'm a heathen. I not even gonna bother to try, you know. I would just do my part to, keep him happy, pray sometimes, give in some offerings sometimes, and maybe that would lessen the anger. No, even though I was afraid of God, it was like I still had, it was this void that I was yearning for. It was just this emptiness. And no matter what I did, no matter what I tried to do, no matter the amount of fun I would have, I would always have an emptiness, a void. And sometimes I would actually, speak to God and tell him, can you protect me? Can you help me in my exams? It was always about asking. Sometimes I would actually thank him, thank you for keeping me safe. Thank you for bringing me to another birthday, like I didn't die. When I would see funerals, like obituaries in the newspaper and stuff like that, it would be like, wow, I wasn't in these pages. Oh, thank you, God, that, you kept me safe. I didn't die. It was more of a transaction than anything. I didn't know that I could have a relationship with God, or that he ever wanted a relationship with me. I didn't even know that God speaks to people. I never, when I said I didn't know that God speaks to people, I didn't think that God would speak to normal heathens like myself. Like, I was not holy. I was not in Bible times. I was not a pastor. I was not elder. Like, I had more against me than for me. So I felt like, God don't speak to me. I was like the worst candidate for his love, but still I had a desire to find it and really experience it. I knew that I didn't want an intellectual type situation. As I said before, I knew the Christian jargon. God is good all the time, and all the time God is good. But reciting these things, repeating these things, they were not translating in my reality, because I don't see this good God. I think God is angry and can't wait to burn me forever. So I wanted to come out of that and actually experience God. Now, by the time I transitioned into the university, my life was full of disappointments. I was used to broken promises, rejection, heartache, a lot of pain. As I said, during my teenage years, I struggled with depression. And I thought, like, I need to get out of this country and start anew. If I could get out, I'll be fine. And I actually begged God, can you just help me make it through these years at university so I can leave this country? I need to find a good life. I need to start all over. At that time, I was living with my father. We did not have any type of relationship. I did not forgive him for all the stuff that happened in my younger years. So it was very tense. I was always angry, like irritated. It was just I was just not in a good space. Emotionally, I was messed up. And so much so, towards the middle of my first year in university, I volunteered myself to go to a psychiatrist, because I'm like, something is wrong with me. And the psychiatrist, talking and stuff, they said psychiatrists, diagnosed it as situational depression. The good news was I did not need medication. So that was good. I had a lot of stress living in my environment and trying to keep up with my schoolwork. No, I helped put some of the stress on myself because I wanted to achieve the highest honors. Why? Because I had a point to prove to my father. You see, I went to a very prestigious school that a secondary school that pushed out doctors, lawyers, all these good, good professions. And I really never wanted to be any of these things. I knew that I wanted to be a wife. I wanted to be a mother. I wanted to take care of family. But I could not voice that. Not coming from where I came from. That was like, what type of ambition is that? Like, you need to go and come again. So I just chose something, and I chose veterinary medicine. Oh, I want to be a vet. Anybody asked what I wanted to do? I wanted to be a vet. And I had actually gone into a university to study veterinary medicine, but I took 2 years off in between secondary school and university. Now, deep inside, I knew that it was not for me. I was too afraid to voice it. But the year that I was due to start university, I was like, no, I am not doing this. I'm going to change my mind. I am going to university and I'm going to do Spanish because I liked the subject. And when I told my father this, he was not pleased. He told me I was wasting my life. I would not turn out to be anything, and he would not be helping me at all with anything to do with paying school fees, anything like that. So I had a point to prove. I'm going to go to university and I'm going to get first class honors, and it's going to be like up in your face. You're going to watch me become something. That was the mindset that I had. So because of this, I had this goal. I spent a lot of long hours at school, including weekends, just studying to make sure that I was on track, because that was my ticket out. Finding a school and life balance was hard, but as I continued to go to therapy, I eventually found what worked for me, and I started to be able to manage, my situation, my emotions, all the things that therapists help you with, and things were much smoother, and I had a good first year. Now, when I transitioned into the second year, I did not have a lot of room for anything outside of school because my schedule was completely jam-packed. I was juggling working part-time, being a full-time student. I was volunteering at a place here, and I was also struggling with my most difficult course at that time, which was an accounting course. I don't like numbers. Give me words any day, numbers. Oh, we gonna fight. So I knew I had to put a lot more effort into this course to make sure that I got an A. This was my goal. Like C's and all of that, those were not options. A plus, maybe I accept a B plus, but below that, So there was a lot of pressure on myself to achieve. And on the day that I had the exam, the final exam for this course, my mind went blank. I could not remember anything that I had learned for the semester. It was almost like I couldn't even add one and one. Nothing was there. The only things that were in my mind was how much of a failure I was going to be, how my father was right, I would not turn out to be anything, and I could just say goodbye to these first class honors. And that was not good at all. But at that point in time, I had a classmate that invited me to do some last minute practice questions with him and some of his friends. So I went ahead, and there was this one person from that friend group that really helped me calm me down, took me through step by step, the past exam papers, the principles of this thing. And it was like, as I was going through it, things started to come back to my memory. So the session was successful. I was able to compose myself, went into the exam, aced it, everything nice. So after that, I had gone overseas for a couple weeks before finishing my second year. And I decided, I need to take my relationship with God more seriously. Not just because he had helped me with that exam, but a lot of stuff had happened up until that point throughout my university life that really helped me to see, I may be a heathen and all of these things, but this God, even though he want to burn me up and stuff like that, maybe he ain't that bad. Maybe he ain't that bad because things that have happened, it could only be him, right? And I also had the deep desire to be married because time was taken away. And I'm like, listen, God, I want to be married. I want a family. That was just a casual thing. Because I had heard somebody say, you could tell God about your desires and about marriage and stuff like that. So I did it. Anyway, that was that. I didn't think too much about it. But, as I said, trying to take my relationship with God seriously and making certain changes that needed to be made. When I returned to Barbados after that short vacation, that's when I officially met who we are going to call Ray. Now, Ray was in a few of my Spanish classes. I did see him before, but I never really paid attention, to be quite honest. Like, I was in university for a purpose, not to be watching to see who's in my classes. And it was Ray actually who helped me on the day of that accounting exam. No, I needed a textbook for a business course, and I was told that Ray was the plug. So I went to him and asked, can you get me this textbook? Because I need it. And Ray's answer was, he said yes, but I'm going to owe him for getting the book. I just brushed it off. That wasn't startling to me in any way. No, naturally, he had to get my number so that I would know when the book was ready. I closed out the conversation because there's just a book transaction. But eventually, he started to message me about coursework and stuff. No, just to say, I was a nerd. I was the person sitting at the front of the class. And if I was not like in the front row, right to the, close to the board, I was near the front because I had to take every note, whatever the lecturer said, I had to take everything. All my assignments, I was just that person. So I guess Ray took notice of this. And anytime he would miss class or what's not, he would message me to ask about, what's the homework, what were the assignments, etc. I didn't think anything about it. I would just share. So we started speaking every now and again, even after I had gotten the book. But I didn't realize that our speaking was becoming more and more frequent. It seemed very innocent, just asking about my day, how I get him through any courses, etc. And because he had actually done some business courses before me, he offered himself to help me in any way. I was grateful for the help, to be quite honest. I was. And it was like, okay, so if I have any questions, I know who I can go to because this person has already traveled this road before. Now, in between all of this, there were comments of like flattering me about how smart and pretty and all these things that I was. Now, this wasn't a red flag to me because I had actually heard these things before. So it was just like, yeah, okay, thanks. I felt like he was being genuine and he seemed to care. He had encouraged me, I shouldn't push myself so hard before I get burned out, which was actually something that the psychiatrist had suggested. I needed to have a good balance. Everything was not, life was not going to end if I didn't get first class honors. Even though for me it would have, in my mind, it would have, right? So he would encourage me in my quest for first class honors because I did share with him my motivation for going so hard. And, he was more like a light-hearted, go with the flow. He was funny. He always used to be laughing. And that was a change for me because I was serious, go all the time. So it was quite refreshing to have someone to laugh with and just be, cool and not so focused on work all the time. So in my free time, in between classes and stuff, I would actually hang out a lot with Ray. I didn't notice at the time that he would be asking me a lot of questions. And it's only now looking back, those questions were very intrusive for some person that you don't really know. But anyway, we spent a lot of time together. We'll be texting back and forth. And it was like, I wouldn't go a day without hearing Ray. And then another thing at that point in time, you know, I would find him asking questions about guys that I'm talking to. And I'm like, I'm not talking to any guys because I'm not interested. I'm literally here for one purpose. But, you know, again, it would be like this flattery, like, what a good looking girl, like, you so single, you must got men running you down. And it's like, no, like, I don't. I would just like brush it off because I'm not thinking. So anyway, I spent the majority of my Saturday nights into Sundays at university doing all-nighters, just studying or catching up with any assignments that I needed. And by this time, as I said, me and Ray were talking a lot. So he volunteered one night to come and stay with me so I wouldn't be at the university alone. I just laughed it off because nobody is giving up their Saturday nights to come to a university to watch somebody study. So I'm like, yeah, you just talking. But he actually showed up. And, you know, I was very surprised. And I felt like, oh my goodness, somebody actually keeps their word. Because remember, my life was broken promises, disappointments after disappointments. I had gotten so used to people saying that they were going to do things, and at last minute, it was like, no, gotta change mine. So when he showed up, I expressed to him, you know, like, wow, I didn't think that you were actually being serious. And he was like, yeah, he doesn't lie and he keeps his word, etc. And this actually started to become a norm. When he would tell me that he was going to do something, he would actually do it. So this was refreshing to me. I was getting a need met, consistency, and people sticking to their promises. But at the same time, even though we were talking a lot, I didn't let it get in the way of my studies. I knew how to kind of zone out and focus. But I do not know when it happened or how it happened. But suddenly it was like a magnetic connection. Like, my goodness, ain't nobody ever get me like this person. And all of a sudden I'm telling him all my business, all my troubles, like things from the past, just everything. And he would be a nice listening ear. And as I said, it helped that he was very easygoing. He was always laughing. And what I did not realize until much later was that I was doing all of this sharing, like, I mean, things like fears, desires, like deep things. Like, I shouldn't be revealing all of these things off the bat. Like, girl, put a zip on it. I didn't realize that he was not sharing anything of great significance. It was all surface level. I remember it was just this one time that I had shared with him something, like, it was a very pivotal moment in my life that it really messed me up. And I shared it with him. And after I shared that, he shared this thing that I'll say supposedly happened to him, because at this point, I don't even know what was true for what was fake. Something that supposedly happened to him. And because I am a fixer, I do not know why I think I could have been Captain Save him. I do not know. I felt so sorry, and it was like, oh my goodness, you know, you shouldn't have had to go through that. That was a lot, you know, for a young child. And, you know, I felt so sorry about it. I'm like, man. And that was like the one thing that was deep, even though in hindsight, yeah, that wasn't really I wasn't really that deep, right? So I guess I was so enthralled by actually having somebody to listen to me that I didn't realize I was just word vomiting. So this is the latter half of my second year at university. In the summer of that year, we became official. And, we had a good summer, like going out. He met my mother and everything seemed cool. And what's not, we had gone out with a couple of my friends. And another thing again, I didn't even realize we weren't going anywhere with any of his friends. I didn't even know his friends. I knew people that he hanged around. And like a couple of them was like surface high, but I didn't know his friends. And I spent more time like one-on-one with him anyway. But honestly, it was a good summer outings and stuff. So transitioning into the third year, which was my final year in university, things started to shift. And I mean, it was like a sudden dramatic shift. I can't pinpoint when it happened. It was like one time everything was light and smooth and happy, and then the next time is like I feel so stressed out. In that year, I had my thesis. I had less classes. I was going to school less, but I had my thesis, and this was a year-long research project that took a lot of work. And I explained to Ray, even though I'm not going to be at school as much, I need to focus on this thesis because everything that I worked for up until that point depends on me acing this thesis so that I made sure my first class honors in the bag. Like, I need to get this thing. Not only that, I was taking an opportunity to work in Colombia for 1 year. Ray felt like I was abandoning him, accused me of abandoning him. He started to demand more and more of my time and would actually become very sulky when I would be doing my work. He would remind me of the sacrifices that he made for the relationship, for me, and I'm so lucky to have somebody like him because anybody would want to have somebody like him. And it's like, if somebody would be so lucky to have somebody like you, why you were still single? Like, but I wasn't voicing this, right? I wasn't voicing this. Anyway, I started to feel very bad, and I decided that out of my 2 free days, I would spend the Fridays with him. As a trade-off, he agreed to help me with the technical part of my thesis. That's get him all the data into the computer system so that I can easily analyze and report on what needed to be done. Despite this, I was actually feeling drained. There were a lot of arguments about not spending enough time with him, not putting enough into the relationship, not living in the present, which admittedly, I wasn't really living in the present. I was more so focused on my goal. He would guilt trip me if I chose to hang out with my friends instead of spending all of my time with him, which was another red flag that I missed. And it was always a constant throwing in my face about me leaving him to go to Colombia. So I kept trying to reassure him, I'll be focused when I get my goals out of the way. I'm not abandoning you. You have your bread buttered. You can go and work for your family after university. I have to work hard for whatever I want because nobody gave me a silver spoon. Internally, I was feeling drained and like I was mothering him. That's actually the term that I told myself. I'm like, why do I feel like I am mothering a grown man? But I just ignored it. And said, nobody ever cared for me like he did. He listens to me. He goes out of his way to make me feel special. All these different things. Because, he was cooking for me, when I would go there on Friday, he would be making breakfast for me. He'd be taking me out to all these nice restaurants. He be using his mother's vehicle to, sacrifice to come, leave where he was on one end of the country to come all the way to the top of the country. Like, all these things like that, right? So I started to feel bad, like, ugh, I just being selfish. So I would think about everything that he kept his word and how I didn't really have that before. So I could just start being unreasonable. Then certain friendships, particularly male friendships, started to become thorns in his side. He didn't want me talking to certain males. He felt threatened by these males. I remember one particular one is like, oh, this guy jealous of our relationship. I'm like, well, he's not. Like, wait. No, I don't even have those type of friends. He's jealous and, just being very insecure. So there's this male I shared with him, what was happening. And my friend was like, Takia, no, this is not normal. He's insecure. And I'm like, no, he not insecure. He just protective over me. And, he don't want anything, making excuses. I'm rationalizing, but I did not realize. My friend tried to reason with me, but in my mind, I'm like, no, I'm not listening to my friend. But then I started to doubt, like, I wonder if my male friends have ulterior motives. Like, I need to dial back because, like, they may be hiding behind the guise of friendship to just, like, try to use me and get with me. Like, I don't know about this. So let me kind of take a step back. So, but despite that, I would still talk to my male friends on the low, right? On WhatsApp. Honestly, we were not having any strange type of conversations, any conversations where lines were crossed at all. Anyway, this secret communication had to come public at one point because before I left for Colombia, I had an emergency and there was literally only one person that could help me in this emergency. And I had to phone this friend up and be like, listen, this is what's happening. I need help. My friend sprang into action just like that, as I knew he would, and got everything sorted. Now, when Ray realized that the problem was sorted so quickly, he questioned, like, who's this person helping you? And when I told him, he became angry. And to me, it was silly because I'm like, you cannot help me with this problem. I need this in order to be able to get over into Colombia. This person can't help me. What's the big deal? Somehow in all of that, I ended up apologizing, even though I did not know what I was apologizing for. I was just saying, I'm sorry. Ray is right. I am wrong. I left Barbados pretty low-key. It was a quick turnaround. I left Barbados pretty low-key. I knew that my friends would have hosted a farewell party for me. Even though we may not have seen eye to eye all the time or always be on good terms or whatever, I knew that these people would have come together and hosted a farewell party for me. That's just who they were. But one, I didn't really feel like hearing Ray about how my outings were me abandoning him. And two, by this time, I had actually started to say things out of my mouth like, I don't have any friends. I would always say, I don't got no friends. I don't got no friends. I don't got no friends. All the time. So it was like, okay, if you don't have any friends, where would you want to hang out with friends you don't have, so to speak? So anyway, I settled for a last night dinner with Ray alone. And, when my friends found out that, I'm going to Colombia and it was not for vacation, they were pretty shocked. Yeah, so I left, went over to Colombia, was constantly told, this relationship is going to end if you sign that contract for more than 1 year. All the time. You better not sign this contract for more than 1 year or this relationship is going to end. You better not sign this contract for 1 year or this relationship is going to end. So somehow this in my subconscious, it went back there. But I couldn't really focus on it because I had a culture shock. I moved on into this country. I did not have a place to live. I was living in a hostel, which was not sustainable for the long run. I had legal stuff to sort out, to get my work to make sure that, everything was above board. Not to mention trying to, figure out what was required of me at the job, all these things. So I couldn't really focus on that. When I got into my first apartment, I was living with 9 other people, which was a lot for me because I'm very introverted. I don't like crowds. I became cool with 3 of them who happened to be males. But one of them was from the Caribbean, and I had actually met him before we went to Columbia because we went to the same university but different campuses, and we met at a mixer before, and we found out, we were going to be working in the same area. And naturally, you tend to kind of stick to people with some type of commonality, especially being in a whole new country, speaking a different language. Is like, yeah, we Caribbean people, we need to stick together. So we ended up living in the same apartment, and I was cool with him and 2 other people. Ray did not like that. He thought that the guys were trying to get me, always telling me be careful, etc. I mean, nothing is wrong with telling anybody to be careful, but I think it was a bit too much. It was almost as if, yeah, Takia, you're not smart enough to make good choices. If a guy is coming at you sideways, you're not smart enough to recognize that and take the necessary action. So, just do what I tell you and don't talk to that person. It was kind of like that. So, whenever I would, getting to know my housemates, well, the 3 of the housemates, it would be a problem if Ray couldn't hear from me and all these different things. I was, again, exhausted. I was even afraid to tell him about any type of fun I was having. I remember me and my housemates, we went to an amusement park. For me, that was a big deal because from a little girl, I wanted to go to Disney World, and I never got the chance to go to Disney World. So going to an amusement park, I'm like, oh my goodness, roller coasters, all of these rides. I was a kid in a candy store. Like, this is exciting to me. And I had a blast at this theme park. And when I got home, I know I was telling Ray about it because I would always tell him, what was happening in my day, etc. It was like his tone was so sour. So I just kind of downplayed how much fun I really had. So it just continued this thing, oh, you abandoned me, and just making me feel so guilty and always reminding me about this contract cannot be for more than 1 year. I was always reassuring him, like I was being a mother, basically. And during this time, he confessed this major lie that he told me at the beginning of the relationship. And let me just say, if it was really in my right mind, I would have left. But the way that he packaged it, right? It was like, I understand if you don't want to be with me after I tell you this, but such and such and such. And here I was like, yeah, I forgive you. These things happen and, it's understandable. And, oh my goodness. Looking back now, it was like, girl, you should have got to know. Anyway, I guess that the way that I responded to this lie, which to me was, why lie about something like this? Why lie about that? And had me thinking something about another person that wasn't even true. But my response to it, I guess that cemented to him, yeah, I got she like a puppet on the string, like she's going nowhere, right? So moving from there, I ended up having to leave the apartment because the other housemates were always partying, belligerently drunk. And after having a host meeting, nothing changed. So I'm like, no, I need to leave this place. Ray and his cousin ended up finding me a nice Airbnb apartment that I was able to negotiate a cost because it was going to be there long term. But it was still almost twice as much as the rent I was paying before. And when I told Ray about this, he was like, no, you need to be safe. And he was talking like long term in terms of marriage. And I had also told him, when I get back to Barbados, I'm not moving back home with my father. I want to be on my own. So I was like, yes, you're going to have to budget the money and I'm going to make a budget for you. Now remember, me and numbers, we're going to have a fight. So I'm like, okay, yeah, you can make the budget for me. I didn't find a big deal. I downloaded the app. He formulated the budget. He had access to the app and everything. I was allotted certain amount of money that I could spend each month on certain things. And I figured, he just looking out for me. So every now and again, he would go in the app to see, how much money I was spending, if I was over budget and stuff. And at a point, I was way over budget because I had an injury. I had cut my hand, had to get stitches, all these things. So I couldn't cook or anything. So I had to be ordering in food. And at that time, I did not even realize I was so stressed out with this relationship. I was actually overeating. I was stressed eating, like just eating. I didn't see it then. All I know is like I was hungry, and it's like this hunger doesn't ever get filled. When I feel sad, I just order in all the junk food and everything because this food is going to make me feel better. So, as I said, he took control of that and also emphasized the fact that I needed to stay in budget so I couldn't go out like I wanted to because we had goals. And he didn't like when I would use terms like when I would talk about myself, I am doing this, he would become angry like, I'm not looking forward to the future. I must say we. I must get out of this selfish mindset. I must say we. So it's like, oh my goodness, like seriously? So anyway, even though I was not really an outside person in terms of going out, I still got tired of going to work, home, sometimes to church, supermarket, and back. Like that was my routine. Even when some of my former housemates I was cool with would invite me to come and co-workers would invite me to come out and explore places, I would make up an excuse about why I wouldn't be able to go, even though I really had nothing going on. I would mention to Ray about the going out, and he would always remind me, that's not in the budget, and I would have to wait until he comes to Colombia. When he comes to Colombia, I would get to go out. Cool. That was something to look forward to. After the first semester working, I took a surprise trip back home to Barbados for 2 weeks. Even though that was not originally in my plans, I had planned a vacation with a mutual friend of me and Ray's who was in another department in Colombia because I didn't want to be alone for Christmas. But I went to Barbados instead for the 2 weeks to surprise Ray because by this time, I was tired of hearing how I abandoned him, how nobody cares about him, how his birthday's coming up, nobody's going to do anything for him. Nobody was celebrating his graduation. I was tired of it. So I'm like, look, let me just go home and do something for this guy for his birthday. I didn't use money or input this thing into the budget because he would have known I used money that I had put aside. I had come down to Colombia with to purchase this ticket, so he wouldn't have known. But when I showed that, he was surprised. I got to meet his workmates who had said, they had heard so many things about, so much about me, and it was nothing bad. So it was good to finally meet this person. And, after I told him I'm just in Barbados for 2 weeks, I'm going to go back and spend Christmas with this other friend, one of his workmates, which was actually his cousin, suggested, I should extend my trip so that I stay in Barbados. Now, to extend trips costs money. I don't remember who paid for it, meaning I don't know if he paid for it or his mother paid for it. Nevertheless, it was paid for, and I was in Barbados for a longer time, and we ended up going back to Colombia together. When we went back, we had a blast. Like, I got to travel. He actually took time to really plan out this trip, like all the different places he was taking me, all the activities that we would have been doing, places that we would have been eating at. And I mean, like I mentioned before, when I went down to Colombia, I was living in a hostel at first. I didn't have a problem visiting other places and living in a hostel. Staying in a hostel. But for Ray, like, no, you too good to be in a hostel. You need to be in a hotel. Like, I'm like, I don't got hotel money. He's like, everything is paid for. And it was good. It honestly was good to be in these nice hotels and living the high life. So we had a lot of fun. But even in between all the fun that we were having, we had a lot of arguments. There was a lot of tension, and he would always remind me, this is my reward because I wasn't able to travel before. And I'm so lucky because no other man would do this for anybody. Look at everybody else that's down here. Nobody does that for them. And he's so great and all these different things. And it was like, yeah, I appreciate the travels. I do appreciate it, right? But then it went into this line of us being technically married. And I'm like, hold up. We ain't no technically married. I don't know where this foolishness come from. I'm not married to anybody. Declaring that we are married does not make us married. But I did not realize that this was actually something that happened before. You see, before we got into the relationship, no, not before we got into the relationship, when we got into the relationship, he mentioned to me that even before I agreed, like, yes, in his mind, we were already together. We were official. I'm like, that's not normal. Like, you don't just decide that you are in a relationship with somebody without asking them, like, what if I said no? His confident reply was, I was not going to say no. And he was right. He was right. So I push this, we are married to this side because I'm not married to anybody. That's a lie. So then he started to coerce me to ask my mother about what she would do if I told her I was getting married. Now, at this point, Ray knew that I did not have the best relationship with my mother. We were very rocky. So I wasn't really going to be looking to her for any approval or anything like that. But what I didn't know was that even though, he was cool with my mother at first, things had gone sour because apparently, I only knew this after the fact, apparently he had asked her about getting a gift for me. And she wanted to know, why would he want to get that particular thing for me? So I'm questioning, so what was this gift? What is it? And he's just trimming, everybody say it looks so good. And so I'm like, oh, this must be a ring. But as he's relaying this story about my mother's reaction, I'm like, why would my mother do something like that? She doesn't want me to be happy. So I was offended. So he knows this. He's having this in his mind and he's telling me, ask my mother about marriage and stuff. I'm asking my mother and her response was just flat, like, I'll have to pray about it and the person would have to demonstrate care and respect towards me and vice versa, etc. I was just like, this was not the response, whatever. But then Ray, planting more seeds of trying to further bring animosity You see, if it was somebody else, she would not say that. Your mother doesn't like me. She doesn't like me. And I don't think it was my mother didn't like him. I think she was able to see through the facade. There's just my feeling. So, but anyway, as I said, like, the trip was good except for the tension parts. I ended up again moving from the apartment where I was into another apartment, and Ray extended his trip to help me with this move. And of course, I had to endure. Nobody would do this for you. You are lucky to have somebody like me. Look at how I extended this trip for you. And it was like, thank you. I'm grateful for the help. Like, thank you very much. But why is it I always need to hear about all these things? Though I didn't verbally say why I always have to hear about these things. That's just, things that are going through my mind. But despite me questioning why do I always have to hear these things, another part of me was like, yeah, Takia, nobody is going to want you. Not going to find anybody like him to do these things. He has done so much for you. So I just kind of ignored the thoughts. I was getting the feelings of something is not right that I was having. Now, when he went back to Barbados, I went back to my normal life. Work, home, supermarket, home. That was pretty much it. And at this time, I had gained a lot of weight. I went to the hospital for a checkup, and the doctor was like, you're overweight. And I'm like, over who? Like, I have never heard that in my life because I was skinny. I was skinny all my life. So going to the doctor and, hearing, yeah, your height is not enough to carry this weight that you're carrying. I went home and told Ray, who was making fun of me, like, you too lazy, you need to exercise. And I said, yeah, I need to exercise. And whenever I would try to exercise, I would be out of breath, and it did not help. I was living in the mountains. So that was a lot, and I felt so bad. I felt so bad about myself because it's like, Lord, I need to lose this weight and I can't get it done whenever I try to work out. I don't like how I feel. And then I would just go right back into eating because eating is my way of escape. So in this time now, back in Barbados, he's back in Barbados. He's on the ground searching for an apartment for me. He found one, paid the deposit so that I could have a place to stay when I went back to Barbados. And I was really grateful because I was intent. I'm not moving back home. No, he came back to Barbados, to Colombia, to help me move back to Barbados. And that was something else again that was wrong in my ears. I gave up my vacation. I gave up pay to come and help you. Nobody would do that for you. You don't see people going to collect people to bring them back home. All these different things. Meanwhile, I was just happy to be going home and moving in my new space and hopefully be able to exercise and lose the weight that I had gained. Returning to Barbados was not smooth. The employment process did not go as planned. I had interviews falling through, and I was jobless for about 3 months. And that time, Ray was helping me with the rent and stuff like that. I was jobless for like 3 months. Then I got a contract where it was like freelancing, and then I went back to a previous job. So I was making money at this point in time, and all of a sudden I felt this desire to have a physical Bible. I had never had that desire before. While in Colombia, I was trying to get things together again with God, but I had slacked off in praying and reading the Bible. So when this desire come, I'm like, I was content having my Bible on the phone. But yeah, maybe I could look into getting this Bible. I started to feel like I needed to pray. the relationship started to feel like a dead end. It was feeling very forced, but I was told, it's my fault because I abandoned the relationship to go to Colombia. I spent too much time focusing on my thesis. I wasn't paying attention to Ray and giving the relationship time, etc. So I'm like, yeah, it's my fault. So I need to fix it. I really wanted things to go about how they were in the beginning, but everything just felt forced. And at the same time, I'm thinking about all the things that he did for me. And I'm saying, I'm never going to find somebody like this. Nobody's going to treat me so well and do these things. And, he would be on hand all the time. Like the accuser, the brethren just reminded me, like, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. And there was a constant tension. I was even told, he doesn't feel the same way about me anymore. I remember it was like this analogy, if I felt this way about you, now it's down here. And I was like, dang, I really got to do something about this to make him love me, And I remember one week I went to church and I heard a sermon and I was so convicted. Though I didn't know what it was at that point in time, I was convicted, the way that I'm living isn't right and things need to change. Things that we're doing aren't right. So, I had shared these convictions and his response as a so-called Christian was not what I had expected. It was like, yeah, you're being extra. You're being too much. These are things that happen in relationships. How do you expect a relationship to grow for these things? And it's like, yeah, no, I really think that this is not right. And, when he would come over to the apartment, I would tell him, you can't sleep here. You need to go home to your parents' house. You have a house. You can't be here. And he would be upset with me. Oh, you know how it is at home and I don't like being there. We can be married soon anyway. And it's like, if you're not married, you're not sleeping here. Like, that's just what it is. And things just were going downhill more and more. I was not happy. He was not happy. And this feeling of this Bible and praying wouldn't leave me alone. So I gave in and started searching for a Bible. I found one. And it was very specific. It wasn't that I just wanted to put a Bible. It was a specific Bible that I felt like I needed to have. After that, he would still visit, but things were just not right. And at one point, I had two male friends, come over to my apartment to visit. We had not seen each other for a while. They were living overseas. And I was like, look, I live in this area, like, you could pop in whenever and say hi. And one day, Ray came to the apartment. I was like, did you have somebody in this apartment? And I immediately lied. I was like, no. Then it was like conscience and overdrive. Oh my goodness, you told a lie. Because he knew I was not a good liar. He knew that. And I ended up telling him the truth and he went off. I'm a liar. He can't trust me. I had a man in the house. No, I had men in the house. What was I doing? And I'm there standing up like showing him where these people were in the apartment, where I was, what we were talking about. And no matter what I said, I was a liar. I could not be trusted and he has to look at me differently. I felt so terrible. I felt so bad. I would journal, about how bad of a person I am, how ungrateful and low down I am, all these negative things. All of the blue, like shortly after that, I had a strong desire to pray and fast. I didn't know a thing about praying and fasting. But this thought came, you need to pray and fast. I was like, I don't even know what you do when you pray and fast. But then I remembered I had this Christian friend and she had mentioned to me a time about prayer and fast. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to ask her. So I called her up. I'm like, you told me a time about praying and fasting. So what do you do in prayer and fast? Do you you just stay on your knees all day and pray? Do you just open the Bible and read? So she explained to me what she did in prayer and fast. And I'm like, okay, thank you. I'm going to, on one of my off days, I'm going to do this prayer and fast. Because at this point in time, the relationship is forced. Something internally is going on with me where I don't feel right. I don't feel like myself. But I don't know what it is. My life is a mess. And I need help. I need help. What my friend failed to tell me was that fasting and praying, no, praying is powerful, but fasting? Woo! She did not tell me the power of fasting. Guys, God showed up on the first day. Now, I had only planned to fast for one day. But what I'm saying is, God showed up immediately. And I did not know. I missed God. I completely missed him. That day I had turned off my phone. Either turned it off or probably turned it off because I'm one of those persons. I don't keep my phone on ring. It's either on vibrate or silent. So I had probably turned it off. I had silenced the house phone. And I had did what my friend said. You read the Bible and you write notes and pray. This guy lost his mind on the day that I fasted. And he broke up with me. Oh, how I wish that I knew that it was God moving at that time. He left his job to come to my apartment to scold me, to break up with me. He was tired of this. He can't deal with me anymore. He keeps telling me not to turn off my phone because he must be able to reach me. And he has had enough and this relationship is over. I was like, I didn't do anything wrong. I was praying and fasting. He does not care. It is done. He has had enough. Oh my goodness. I sunk. I felt like a piece of me was ripped out of me. And I called my mother. Yes, my same mother. And I was crying to her and telling her what happened. And she was like, oh, I pray that if this was not for you, that God would just end it. Lady, I'm not trying to hear that. I'm not trying to hear that. I could not eat. It was just bad, right? I wasn't sleeping. I was begging. I was groveling, trying to get this man to give me another chance. And, it got to a point, it was like a test. He was like, so how are you going to be better? I'm like, okay, so I'm going to do this. I will play your video games. There was this particular game, Resident Evil. As I said, I'm a highly sensitive person. So see certain movies, certain things I cannot watch. It affects me terribly. And this particular one was one that I knew affected me because he had tried to get me to play it before. And it was like, no, I can't. I don't even like the name. Why would you play something called Resident Evil? I'm just there with a list, I'm going to play Resident Evil. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And it was like, that's not enough. And I'm just groveling and groveling. At this point, I am degrading myself. Let me just put it like that. I am degrading myself. Trying to get this guy back into a relationship with me. I am praying to God, Lord, change me, make me good so that he can love me because nobody is going to want me. But this is part of my thinking process. Nobody is going to want you to care. Nobody is going to deal with you. You got too much baggage from the past. You're a messed up person. I'm the only person that will want you. So I'm like, God, I'm a terrible person. I don't know why you made me like this. Can you please just bring him back to me? Just please, just make it good again. At this point, I was using his car to get to work. And I'm like, so you're going to start allowing me? Are you going to start letting me use your car to get to work? He's like, no, I'm not going to start letting you use the car. But I'm just not coming around you. And it was like, oh my goodness. I felt so bad. And at that time, he had family in from overseas. Let me backtrack a little bit. All the groveling and degrading myself, he ended up agreeing, okay, let's give this one more try. He's gonna test me to see what change. So over those days and weeks, I'm degrading more and more and trying to do this and trying to do that to be good enough. And at this time, he had some of our family members in from overseas. And one day he told me, he told one of the family members that I was pressuring him to marry me. And I'm like, huh? That's not true. Like, why would you say something like that? And it was along the lines of, oh, women are like that. Women like to pressure men into marrying them. And I'm like, no, I don't ever want to pressure somebody into marrying me. Like, you should marry someone because, you love them. At that point in time, I didn't fully understand what marriage was, even though I desired it. Anyway, I was hurt. I was confused. Yeah. So my mother was basically the only person that knew about this breakup. Yeah. Because I was even worried about, was he going to tell his family about me? And we had an outing with his family. We were not together, but he still allowed me to come. And I was like, he's going to tell his family all these bad things. I'm this terrible person. And guys, there was literally nothing realistically that gave credence to these thoughts. But my mind had been conditioned to think, like, you are ungrateful, you're this, you're that, all these negative things. Anyway, 2 months later after this breakup, so it was like, yeah, that happened in December. So January, February, we were engaged. We went overseas together, shot for engagement ring, started planning this wedding. 6 months later, we were married. My mother, but let me backtrack. Before even this marriage occurred, let me just say how God loves us so much, right? When he tries to stop something and we don't take heed, he's going to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. But when we keep resisting, it comes to a point he allows us to just have our way. And that's what happened to me. Because in between the engagement and the marriage, I started getting an influx of dreams. It would always be infidelity. I would see myself broken and just crying. Like, I would see him being unfaithful. All these negative type dreams. And, dreaming was something normal for me from the time I was a child. I never knew that God communicated to people, much less me, in dreams. And I had actually had people before laugh at me when I would share some things that I dreamt. And they was like, girl, like, you crazy. You talk a lot of foolishness. And even though, like, a lot of these dreams come to pass, it would be like, no, you need to start, eating so late, all these different things. So I brushed it off. I believe, like, I'm making up things in my head. I probably just stressed about the whole marriage. And there was this particular dream, well, more than one dream. Somebody, even though it was not like a physical person, it was like someone outside trying to stop this. And I would always be fighting. I would see myself in the dream trying to do everything I could to get this marriage to go forward. But something outside of me would be trying to stop this marriage. As I said, I continued to ignore the dreams until I had a dream that was not so nightmarish. I saw myself married even though there was no face. I was like, okay, yeah, everything's good. Marriage could continue, and what's not is going to come off. Because he had even told me, like, I worry too much about finances and all these different things. Then I had a dream. And it was not just a dream. This dream was so vivid. My body was affected when I woke up. I was shaking, my heart was racing, and I actually tore away the dream. And this guy just looks at me like, if anything, that would be you that do that, not me. I didn't know that God was actually giving me a beforehand of if I continue on with this marriage, how it would have ended up. Anyway, pushed it away. I was still getting a lot of uneasy feelings, still planning this wedding, going ahead, things seeming to be falling into place, but I wasn't settled. I tried to shake it. I convinced myself, like, this guy pushes me closer to God. Even though that was a little push me closer to God, what? Probably push me closer to God in the sense of, God, I need help. But that was it. The night before the wedding, I spent that time with my maid of honor. And I was so uneasy. I didn't tell her anything. I went in the bath, I took a shower, and I took that time to myself, and I wept. I didn't cry. It was like a weeping, a releasing of something. But I said, you know what? I'm nervous, and it's better for me to get out these tears now, because my face is going to be too expensive to be crying and, washing off the makeup. The wedding day was beautiful. And I was like, yeah. Got married. I'm married to this good, godly man. And, eventually we're going to have a family. But what was to happen next? I was not expecting. The Bible says, the way of the transgressor is hard. And if there's any young person watching me right now, learn from me. The way of a transgressor is indeed hard. God doesn't desire us to go through certain things, but when we are disobedient and we reject his warnings, there are consequences to pay. And the consequences, they're not pretty. So, we were married. I was happy, but underneath it was still like, Tikia, why are you outwardly smiling, but internally you have to convince yourself that everything is okay. This is what's going through my mind literally the night of the wedding. Like, there's nothing wrong in the sense of, how the wedding turned out and everything. But why? Why do you feel this way? Why are you, trying to convince yourself everything is okay? The day after the wedding, I don't mean days, I mean the literal day. One day after the wedding, he said something that it set the tone. It set the tone. I actually had a good friend that Ray insisted couldn't come to the wedding. He actually gave me an ultimatum. It was an argument. If I invited that friend, there's going to be no wedding. And I had a choice to make. The type of relationship that me and this person had, I couldn't just text this person and say, hey, you're not going to be invited to my wedding. I mean, I always expected, we would have been there for each other's milestones in life. We had gone through so much. We knew each other all of our life. Basically, we grew up together. So I knew I couldn't text my friends this. So I had to have the hardest face-to-face conversation that I had faced in my life to that point. And I remember that entire day I was nervous, like, oh my goodness, how I can look this person in their eye and say what I'm about to say. Because my friend is happy for me because I have on this facade of this good relationship and, saying a lot of good things about Ray and stuff like that. So my friend is happy for me and all these different things. When I sat my friend down and I told him it was a him, like, what happened? I could see the hurt, even though he was like, you know what? I understand, blah, blah, blah. I could see the hurt, and when I saw that thing, broke my heart. It broke my heart because we had been through so much in our friendship, like so much in life. And it's like, really? This person, I would have, visited their house, eaten their house, they visit my house. Like, we were real friends. Real friends. So I promised my friend, even though, you won't be able to come, I'm going to send cake for you. When you made it on a handing out the cake. So before I collected the slices to give to my maid of honor for distribution, because, you got to make sure you got enough to give to who has to get cake. Ray asked to see my list, to see who from my side was getting cake. And when he saw this friend's name, he said no, he's not getting any cake. I asked, like, why not? And his response was, let's not start off on the wrong foot. I was just there like, what? But we had agreed that because he can't come to the wedding, he's going to get cake. There's not right, there's not fair. Let's not start off on the wrong foot, Takia. I'm tired of you putting people before me. Like, what? So I took his name off the list. I never reached out to him and told him anything. Like to this day, we don't have a relationship. Like, that was the end. I never reached out to him and told him anything. I did not tell my maid of honor what happened. It was just like, here, there's the list. That's it. So that was one day after the wedding. 2 days later, we were overseas waiting to, go on the honeymoon and stuff. And I woke up with a deep pit in my stomach. I knew that something was wrong. Inwardly, I knew, okay, you just made the biggest mistake of your life and you can't undo it now. I can't even explain it in words adequately, but even looking at Ray, his appearance was different. I have dark brown eyes. Ray's eyes were lighter than my what I call pretty eyes, and I thought his eyes were very pretty. When I looked at him, his eyes were not the same color that I knew. His eyes were dark. But I thought I was tripping. I was like, nah, you imagining things like, like, what? I didn't say anything, but I knew what I was seeing. It was like a darkness. It was a darkness. I was sick for the entire trip. I was accused of pretending to be sick because I didn't want to be with him. I didn't want to be around him. I hated him. All these foolish things. I was also told, how lucky I was. He gave up money to marry me. I made him lose out on money so he could marry me. And I'm like, who says this? Who says these types of things? I had missed out on jobs as well to be married. Like, I didn't know this is a competition. But anyway, despite what I was feeling internally, I didn't want to spoil the trip. So I would actually fight through and, laugh and all these different things. And that's where the jokes started to come about me being pregnant. And I'm like, that's nothing to joke about. I can't afford to be pregnant at this time. So it was just a lot of, I was emotionally drained. It was this It was an up and down between love bombing and depreciating me, devaluing me. If I would choose to pray or read my Bible, it would be like, why are you choosing that over me? And here I am like, we're supposed to have God first in this thing. And bit by bit, I did start reading the Bible. I would just pray, silently and stuff like that. Anyway, continue the trip. As I said, outwardly, everything seems to be good, though it's not. We returned home. I went straight into a new job. And this sickness that I was feeling was not moving. Like, actually, it was getting worse. I ended up taking a pregnancy test. And it was like, it feels like before the P hit the stake was like the 2 lines. I broke down crying. I was like, no, this can't be. Like, there's a cheap test. Let me try another one. Peed on the stick. Same thing. I am like, crying. And Ray looks at me, calm as a cucumber. You can just get rid of it. I stopped my crying. Like, why would you say something like that? I would never abort a child. I could not believe that these words came out of his mouth, because he knew my values. There were just certain things that were no for me. I remember I don't know why I'll be thinking about this at such a young age, but I remember from young, I had said, even if I were to get pregnant outside of wedlock, I would not abort a child. He knew this. So to say that, and then like we're married, is like, why would you tell me to get rid of this child? Anyway, I went into denial. I'm like, these pregnancy tests, too cheap. They gotta be lies. There's no way I'm pregnant. I'm broke. I'm now starting a new job. It's stressful. A lot of tension in this marriage. I cannot bring a child into this mess. I feel irresponsible. We ended up going to the gynecologist, who was like, yeah, you're pregnant. I started to cry again in his doctor's office. Like, I'm like, no, I can't be pregnant. No, I'm not pregnant. And the doctor is, yes, you're pregnant. I went home to work, and I'm trying to push this thing on my, like, no, this is not real. I continued on, and I think I was 12 weeks old. Yeah. Not 12 weeks old. I was 12 weeks pregnant when I returned to the doctor, and that's when I heard the baby's heartbeat for the first time. And I remember crying. This time it wasn't tears of, oh my goodness, I can't do this. It was tears of, oh my goodness, this is real. And I'm actually bringing a life into this world. It was very emotional for me, because also around this time, my grandmother, she got sick. So it was a lot. But nevertheless, a week after accepting, like this is reality, I can't get away from this, I woke up one night and I was passing out blood clots. I started to scream hysterically, and I woke Ray up. He was upset that I was screaming hysterically and that I woke him up. He was like, you need to calm down. And I was trying to explain to him, no, like, something's falling out of me. Like, can you call your sister? His sister is a doctor. Can you call her, like, find out, like, what's going on? And when he called, even though I couldn't hear, I figured that miscarriage was given as a possibility and I would need to go to the doctor. So I started like panicking and I'm like, can you pray? Can you pray? And he just looks at me blankly. I'm like, can you pray? Can you pray? I'm praying. I'm like, no comfort, no words, nothing. I'm just there shaking. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to pray for myself. I started to, first of all, tell God how sorry I was, that I was not excited when I first found out I was pregnant. Please don't take my baby from me. Just forgive me. Don't let my baby die. Just please, please, God, please. And I heard a voice say, relax. I got you. It was a real calming voice. It was like, relax. I got you. I was fully persuaded that I have lost my mind because it was just me and Ray. He was not speaking. I was not speaking out loud. There was nobody else. Who's that voice? What voice is that? I continued praying and confessing, like, just thinking about how awful I am and ungrateful. Like, Lord, I was not happy when I found out about the pregnancy and just going on and on. Like, God, give me a sign. Give me a sign, please, that you're not taking this child from me. And it was like, as soon as I said that prayer, I felt a kick. But I'm like, I don't know what that was. I don't know what that was. I ended up going to the gynecologist the next morning. And after he did his checks and all of that, the baby was there, heartbeat strong, and I had no sign of bleeding, mind you. Just a couple minutes before I went into the doctor's office to be assessed, I was in the bathroom and I changed out a pad that had blood. So no sign of bleeding, and the doctor was like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes. I'm sure. I pulled out my cell phone because I had taken pictures. I had taken pictures to send to Ray's sister. I take out my phone and I'm like, look, this was passing out of me. Like, this is like clumps of tissue. And the doctor was like, yeah, the baby's fine and everything. So I'm like, this is strange. I messaged a doctor friend. I was like, hey, is it possible for you to feel a baby kick at 13 weeks? Long story short, my friend was like, nah, it's not possible. I was like, okay, let me just forget everything. I clearly made up these things in my head. I must be going crazy. Life at home continued to be miserable. I was constantly sick. I couldn't cook. Not that I could not cook in terms of I didn't know how to cook, but I couldn't stand, not even the sight of the kitchen, to see the kitchen. I would feel nauseous, the smell, everything. It was just awful. I was, you know how they say morning sickness? I was sick from morning till night. Know how they say, okay, you just be sick usually in your first trimester? I was sick every day of my pregnancy. Fruits and salads were like the only thing that I could eat without feeling like I was just going to throw up all over the place. So Jay did all the cooking. He did the cleaning. I basically just went to work, expended my energy in the job, came home. If I had any lessons to plan, ate, and slept. I was in a lot of pain. Even though I had a healthy pregnancy generally, I was in a lot of pain, like in my bones, in my back. And my daughter liked to bury herself in one part of me, and sometimes she wouldn't move. So then when she wouldn't move, I would not be able to move. And sometimes the pain was so bad, I would just have to sit and cry. So with all that going on, Jay was constantly telling me, you know, how awful of a wife I was. I'm lazy. I'm always sleeping. I don't do anything. And when the baby comes, he's going to make me do everything in the house for 9 months. So I could see how it feels. I cried a lot. I also prayed a lot. I would ask God, like, can you please help me to be a good wife? I don't know why I'm so bad. Like, why did you make me like this? Why am I so terrible? And one day, the stress just became too much. I went into my shower and I cried. And I dedicated my child to God right there in that shower. But first of all, I blame God for my situation. Like, you're the reason why I'm here anyway. Like, Then I humble myself and like, look, I need your help. I don't know what I'm doing. This marriage is, I don't want to keep saying it's a mistake, but it's a mistake. I am basically in this thing alone. I tired of pretending as if everything is okay. I need your help. Just like I heard that voice saying, relax, I got you. In the bath, I heard Deuteronomy 6:6-9. I was like, I don't know what that is, but let me go and check to see what's this Deuteronomy 6:6-9. And when I read it, I was like, whoa, this job as a mother, there's not a joke. So it was like I dedicated my child to God, and as a token that God had accepted my dedication, he was like, yeah, this is what I need you to do for that child. I'm like, listen, I really need to get myself together. I didn't tell anybody about these experiences. I just continued enduring the berating, keeping a show in public. I would journal at that time. And one time he found me journaling, and he told me to stop. He was like, I would make the child think that he was not there for me and the child is going to hate him. And I didn't need to journal anyway because that's what he was there for, to listen to me. And I stopped journaling. I stopped. I would continue to secretly pray and ask God to fix me and fix the marriage for the sake of the child. I was threatened a lot with divorce, which was triggering for me because my parents were divorced, and I had told Ray, I'm not going into marriage to be divorced. Like, that's not an option for me. So anytime that I was not behaving, I would be threatened with divorce and put on punishment and be told how lucky I was to have somebody like him. And, this whole, he's just putting up with me and he can't get rid of me because how would it look and all these things. So I started to feel worse about myself. I cried a lot. Baby felt all of that. I was walking on eggshells. I was no longer sleeping because I was tired. I would actually sleep to escape, because at least while I was sleeping, I didn't have to hear how stupid I was, how much wrong I was doing, how I don't make good decisions. Women are stupid. Women can't make good decisions. How great and grand Ray is and how terrible and like the scum of the earth that I am. So, yeah, sleep was my escape. Food couldn't be my escape anymore because literally fruits and vegetables, fruits and salad were like the staple. When I was alone, I would wonder to God, like, why are you not making me into a good wife? Why are you not making me into a good and a grateful person? So I enjoyed that for my pregnancy. My grandmother died exactly 2 weeks before my daughter was born. And I was relieved that, she was out of her pain, but I felt kind of sad having not really been around for much of her illness. That was a tricky time. But anyway, then it was labor and childbirth, another traumatic situation. And I know for a fact that if God did not intervene in that, I would have died. Simply put, I would have died. I remember after I had given birth to my daughter, and I feel like this was an angel. I don't know. I feel like this woman was an angel. She was so calm and soothing to me. And one of the things that she said before she left was, you know, when you get up and you feel any blood clots, you need to get help immediately. And then she just left. And after surgery and everything, Ray was in the room with me. And when I got out of the bed, to go and look at the little child, I just felt like clots were passing out. And I told Ray, I need help. Because the midwife told me, if when I get up and I pass out clots, I need help immediately. Ray stood up there like, let's wait. I said, no, this is what the midwife said. Can you please get me help? Because obviously, I literally just gave birth. I can't run and go anywhere. It's painful. He's just standing there and I'm frantic. But God is so good. Like, almost instantly, a midwife walked by the door that I actually knew in real life, and I was able to get her attention, and she came, and I'm like, this is what the midwife told me, this is what happened, and the look on her face was like, listen, get back on that bed, no, like, you're hemorrhaging, I'm like, who? Like, so, if it were up to Ray, I would have died. My child would be motherless at that point. Anyway, ended up staying in the hospital for a little extended time, returned home, and I was pretty much a single parent when I came home. As much as Ray boasted, like, embarrassed me in public, telling people that he would be the one doing all the work when the child was home and I would just be sleeping and all these different things. Like, wait, would you think that? When we got home, I was doing everything. The help that I received was when we were in public or when we were around before his family. After being home for a few days, I had asked, can you help with the baby at night? It's really painful having stitches and moving and stuff like that. I was told, you stay home all day doing nothing. I have to work, so you can do it. I just shut up. And I did what I had to do for my child. Fortunately, during the day for 6 weeks, I had my mother's help. Well, he was at work during the day, and this bothered him. He didn't want my mother to be there. My mother was the thorn in his side that he could not get rid of. No matter what he tried to do to get me to start speaking to her and all these different things, she was like the thorn that he could not get rid of. Eventually, I settled into my role, being a stay-at-home mother. I didn't go back out to work. I enjoyed being with my daughter, but I had postpartum depression. In public, you won't be able to tell. I wore a smile. I was myself, laughing, making jokes, around those I'm comfortable with, pretending very well. But all the while, I was becoming more and more and more isolated. My life was home, breastfeeding support group once a week, which turned into mommy and me group, supermarket with Ray. That was it. I felt like my brain was broken. I felt like something was terribly wrong with me. I didn't know what it was. And, when Ray was out at work, I would feel kind of lighter. As soon as, before he even got to the door, when I heard his car rolling in, I would feel like a weight just pushing me down, oh my goodness. In my alone times, God started to impress on me, you need to go back out to church and you need to take your daughter. I had actually stopped going to church for a while because according to Ray, it was too far. He didn't want me traveling so far to go to church with the child, and I mustn't catch the bus because bus is for poor people. Inwardly, I'm like, bruh, we not rich. And that's the most ridiculous thing. Buses for poor people, what? Anyway, I had stopped going for a while. But God orchestrated such a brilliant plan where we ended up moving, and I was close to an old friend and his family. So I started to go to church with them, started to, fellowship with them after church, which was normal. Like when I was growing up in church, we would eat together after church and stuff like that. And Ray didn't like it. He was like, you need to meet this person, blah, blah, blah. He met the person. Still was very passive aggressive when I had to go, that he would catch attitudes and all these different things. I continued to go because when I went to church and after church, like fellowshipping with my friend, his family, and his friends, I realized like, oh my gosh, like I miss having company. I miss having good conversations where everybody had their own opinion and you weren't ridiculed or called stupid, and nobody was berating me. Like I began to look forward to church. I was like, okay, the week needs to speed up so I can get to go to church. Like, yes, I need church. I need to be around these people. Now, a few months into that routine, my friend invited me to an evangelistic series. It was to take place during weeknights. But I had excuses. I was like, I don't have clothes to wear. I don't want to wear the same thing. People are going to be looking at my clothes. And, I got the baby. I can't have the baby out at night, in the cold and all of this. But eventually, I'm like, let me just give the first night, at least the first night, let me give it a try and see how it goes. When I went the first night, I was hooked. The second night I went, I was hooked. I was using Ray's car. He was letting me use his car. And I was like, yo, I really need to be here. And this is where I started having puzzling experiences. I was saying in my dreams, I really don't know what it was, but I started to have puzzling experiences. I would go to church. Like, I started to have like this hunger and thirst, like there's something more. There's something more to life. I would go to sleep. I would hear my name. A voice would call my name. And I would be being asked questions from the Bible. And I would not have a chance to respond in the sleep, dream, whatever. And the voice would give me the answers, give me scriptures. And I know it was scriptures, not because just the scriptures were being quoted, but the actual, like say the reference was Romans 12:1. The voice would say whatever, Romans 12:1. And guys, when I went to church, the meeting, the following night, whatever happened in the dream, whatever the previous night is exactly what the evangelist will be preaching about. And I was like, this is creepy. Like, how is this? How can this be happening? Like, this is not normal. I just wanted more and more of God. This then made Ray happy. He actually tried to stop me from going to church. I remember like him telling me, you keep this up and see how far you're going to get in life. I started journaling again, but this time secretly, and I would take little notes. And I started to put together patterns. When I see certain things that, like, I would feel like something right, I'll write it down. And I started to see patterns. I started to see, okay, when such and such happens, this is his response. This is what happens. When I react this way, this is what happens. So I'm writing these things down. And I noticed too a pattern now causing arguments whenever I was going to church. I told myself, I didn't say it to Ray, I told myself, well, if me going to church and getting Jesus is me not going anywhere in life, I don't want to go anywhere in life then. I refuse to let this man stop me. When I couldn't use his car, I would turn on the sermons in the house. Well, in the bedroom. On my laptop, not on the TV. On my laptop. And he would say things like, turn down that noise and all of this. I didn't let that stop me. I would turn it down. I'd be straining my ear to listen to me and my baby, because I would got my baby there and me. Like when we were going in person, I got my child. I'm like the bag lady, a baby bag on one shoulder, my child in the next hand, and I just like girl, like, we gonna listen to this, and at home, it's like, I got the laptop there, I got my child in my hand, and like, straining and listening and all of these different things. Now, before the evangelistic series ended, remember, emotionally, I'm still not good. I had a panic attack on the day that I went to visit his mother's house. And that was the turning point for me. I was like, nah, I need help. I am not okay. This was the worst that I ever felt. I felt like it was seconds from death. It was like my heart was coming out of my chest. I was just sweating my butt. Like, it was racing. And it was like, I don't know why I'm feeling like this, but I need help. And I told Ray, like, I need to see someone. And he agreed and booked a session with a counselor, because I insisted, like, this, I need a Christian counselor. I just don't need any and everybody that's just going to be like scientific. I need a Christian counselor. And that could have only been inspired by the Spirit of God, to be quite honest. Now, from the first session, the counselor, she was a woman. She realized, like, nah, you're not just going through postpartum depression. This is more. And as I got to talking to her, she said, I'm going to have a session with Ray, because what you're going through, he's playing a major role in. So, yeah, you can continue your singular sessions, but I'm going to have to bring him in. And it was kind of like a relief for me, in a sense. I am so sorry. I need to turn on the light. I didn't expect this video to be so long. I need to turn on the light. So give me a quick second. As I was saying, the counselor realized, like, he was playing a major role, even though at that time, not at that time at all, she never mentioned any type of abuse. After speaking to her, like, just getting out my concerns, this is how I'm feeling. I don't feel normal. I don't feel like I am right. I am just all these different things I'm telling her. And I started to look forward to these sessions because I wanted to be better, genuinely wanted to be better. I had to take the baby with me because all of a sudden Ray could not keep the baby. And it came to a point where the counselor decided, yes, now is the time for, the joint session. He needs to come in. Now, by the time that was scheduled, I was actually a bit stronger, but I knew what the repercussions would be of me exposing him and the things that he would do and say. But the counselor did not believe me. When I would tell her, okay, this is going to happen, she'd be like, Takia, like, you overthinking. Like, are you sure? And like, when she had met him at first, she was like, he doesn't seem that way. He seems very open to, you're all working together and stuff like that. I'm like, ma'am, I am telling you, I'm not asking you. When I get home, this is what is going to happen. And when I would come back and tell her, well, such and such happened, she's like, I'm not getting it. I'm like, but I told you, right? So anyway, that also affected me in a sense. I started to doubt myself some more, even though I knew the reactions that were happening. I still started to doubt, like, is it me? Am I the problem? Couples counseling, like I said, I was much stronger, but then something happened. A divine thing happened. When I first was talking to Ray, at that point, I would call it something. I could look back now and say the Holy Spirit. Something had told me, Takia, you need to be rebaptized. And I was like, get over here. I don't even know where that's coming from. But this something, when we started the couples therapy, this something came back again, but this time it was like an urgency, Takia. You need to be rebaptized. You need to give your life back to God. Actually give your life back to God. And I was like, no, I fine. Like, I don't need to be rebaptized. I was baptized when I was younger and I'm fine. And it was a wrestle. And I remember, like, God, I would get rebaptized if, things change at home and stuff. And this thing kept coming. You need to be rebaptized. You need to be rebaptized. I kept pushing it away until I could not push it away anymore. This time the evangelistic series are still going on. And I go to one. And as I'm sitting, just listening, I remember just telling myself, what is man talking about? Don't have anything to do with what he said the topic is. And it was literally just me by myself holding my child. And I heard, salvation is not a group thing. It is an individual thing. And I was like, all right, God, you got me. I doing it. I didn't question because there was nobody next to me on either side. Nobody could be telling me this but God. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. But I know that things at home I knew that things at home were not going to be good. I told the counselor about my decision without giving her all the details around it. I'm like, I'm giving my life back to God. I'm going to be baptized. And, she gave me her blessing. And what's not, she was just like, make sure that you know what you're getting into, etc., etc. I'm like, yeah, cool. I ended up telling Ray, and he was like, what you need to do that for? He didn't support it, but I still went ahead anyway. Shortly after my rebaptism, he stopped going to the sessions. I presume because he saw that he couldn't manipulate and gaslight the counselor and get her to blame me for everything, because she was holding me accountable for my foolishness and she was calling him out on his foolishness as well. I remember she was calling him out. I didn't like it, but I would go home, I would take in what she would say and I would reflect, and it's like, you know what? She's right. I need to work on this. I need to work on that. And it's like, I need to put in this work because I need to be better, period. So I continued these sessions alone, even though I did not realize at that time, God had already started my exodus. So the sessions were to build me up, to build back up my self-esteem to a certain level, because it wasn't all the way, it was still very, very low, but it was to build me up a bit. And because she was a Christian counselor, she always took things back to the scriptures. So I wasn't necessarily looking at God over time as a fire-breathing dragon waiting to just slay me. I started to see a different God. Anyway, my morning devotion time was really precious to me. God would wake me up so early. I would look forward to it. He started speaking to me. I could hear him so clearly. And he started to give me step-by-step instructions on what I needed to do. And I obeyed, even though at the time I didn't know what was happening or why. And the first thing that I remember God told me to do was that I had to be kind in my speech and not respond in anger to Ray. I then had to start watching the reality shows I was watching, because I was a reality show junkie. I was into the more ratchet the reality shows, yeah. I had to stop watching those. And then the next step was fasting. Every Tuesday, it was that specific. I had to fast on Tuesdays. Now, this time, I was convinced, God, you trying to kill me? I have a child to breastfeed. What do you mean fasting on Tuesdays? But anyway, I didn't argue. I fasted just like he told me to. And it was like scales started to peel off. At this point, the monstrosities, let me call them what they are, started to appear in their monstrous form to me. All the things that, I was getting these feelings and, was second guessing myself. I started to see these things in their true light. So every week, every Tuesday, I would fast. And the more I did it, the more the scales came off. And somehow there was this strength, even though it wasn't much, in me that I didn't know. And it was like the more that I fasted, the worse this marriage got. And Ray said some things to me at that point that it like latched on to my brain. 3 things in particular. He looked at me one day and said, because by not like certain things that I started to fight back, not physically fight back, I started to push back. And like this ain't make no sense. He said to me, you are supposed to obey me. You are not to question me. I want to control you, but I can't. If I tell you to do something, you are supposed to just do it. You would, before, you would do whatever I say. I know you always questioning me. I was like, huh? And then the last one, the third one that stuck, he looked at me and said, if anything happens to us, I am going to take you to court and I'm going to take that child away from you and I will win because you have nothing going for you and my family will support me. That's off. I remember I look at him, the sassy tequila come back out and I was cooking and I slammed on what was in my hand and I was like, I will fight you. Like, that was my reaction. I will fight you. And he looked at me and he laughed. He was like, why you gotta take things so seriously? I was like, you just threatened to take my child from me. That is not a joke. Oh, you take things too seriously. But those 3 things stuck in my mind. And I was like, God, why would somebody say that? Why would he say something like that to me? I continued on and I told God, I'm willing to stick out the marriage. I just need you to help me get through. Needless to say, he ended up putting me and the child out of the house. This was not only hurtful, but humiliating, very shameful. And I was very much still trauma bonded. I wanted the marriage, even though I knew that something was terribly wrong. Even though I knew I was not okay. I was afraid of failing because my mother had been divorced, as well as other women in my family. It was like, I just continuing this cycle. But again, God slid through dreams. First of all, God reminded me of the dream that I had before we had gotten married. And I was like, could it be? I started getting more dreams of infidelity. And at that point, I was going back and forth from my father's house. I moved back to my father's house. I was going back and forth from there to the house we were in because I didn't want anybody to know, we're not living together. Just trying to keep up a facade. And at that point, he was like, we just need to separate for a time. And, let's see, I don't want to be waiting around until you change. You might take too long to change, but I just need some time to think. So in my mind, I was like, okay, we can get back together. So I was back and forth and what's not. Seeing what I saw in my dreams, I confronted him. And of course, he lied. Then God just stopped the dreams because it was like, I actually believed him. Yeah, he not doing these things. It was almost as if God said, look, child, your head too hard. I giving you dreams and you ain't getting it. Parables done. Dreams done. Physical evidence, here you go. But before God did that, God actually took time to prepare my heart. Because when I was getting the dreams of the infidelity, I remember I would be so broken. I'll be crying. So God had to really prepare and repair my heart. So when I saw what I did, I just smiled and there was no breaking down. It was like a peace in a sense. Yeah. God, you really had my back all along. You weren't lying. And this was the start of 2020, so before the pandemic. And what God did, he put me back in touch with some old friends. I didn't tell them what was going on because, as I said, I was way too embarrassed. But God is so strategic. One of my friends, God gave her a dream. She told me the dream. But even though I knew that it was accurate, I was like, yeah, I don't know what you will have. I don't know what you will have that type of dream. Like, what are you talking about? Like, everything is fine over here. But months later, I admitted to her that, yeah, this dream was real. This is what's happening, you know? And I ended up, like reaching out to his mother. I thought that, she was somebody I could confide in. Again, God was looking out to me because I remember clearly God was like, no. But I'm like, but what's happening is not right. And, I need to let somebody, like at least his mother, that she could talk to him or whatever. Guys, when God gives warnings, obey, because he knows what's ahead and he knows people's true heart and intention. You're never going to find a narcissist family turning against it, like calling them out on their crap. Like, they were going to be really, sanctified and holy. They going to believe all the crap. Even though this woman with her own ears heard certain things, is like, yeah. But anyway, I reached out to her, like, just talking about what's going on or whatever. And I ended up, confiding in her, telling her about, what I was going through, the postpartum depression and stuff. And ended up getting an appointment with a psychiatrist. I didn't even know that she had told Ray. And when I went to the psychiatrist, he's outside waiting. Anyway, I went into the psychiatrist and I talked to her. It was I was a little stronger person. So as I was talking to her, she encouraged me, like, there's nothing wrong with you. You've been emotionally abused. And, the counseling and stuff that you're going to, based on what I'm seeing, like, it's working. So I would just tell you to keep going, keep doing what you're doing. And she said to me, don't ever let anybody tell you that everything is your fault, because that's not true. And I was like, emotionally abused? And that hurt me. It really did. On the outside, Ray was on hand, like, what did psychiatrist say? What did psychiatrist say? And I was like, nothing is wrong with me. Oh, so you just treated me badly for no reason. And I'm like, I went back into this groveling mode, like, I didn't know, and all these things. Even though I did not reveal to him what the psychiatrist said, I went home to God and I wept. She said emotional abuse, but deep down, I'm like, that's not all that happened to me. God, something happened to me, and I want to know what happened to me. I am a shell of myself. I am barely existing just to take care of this child. God, what happened to me? It was like God was waiting for me to ask. God revealed to me, you were abused by a covert narcissist. I did not know anything about no narcissism, anything. As I started to research, my heart just shattered in a million pieces, because I could not fathom how a human being could be so evil. And because they were not out there, it was more behind the scenes. This was painful. And I remember crying and telling God, nobody is going to believe me. If I speak out, nobody is going to believe me. And I was just writing to God. I'm like, who's going to believe me if I say such and such happened? Who's going to believe me if I say this happened, that he did this or he did that? I'm like, God, nobody is going to believe me, because he has done an excellent job painting himself as such a wonderful person. And I am like this emotional and terrible type person, and he had already put a wedge between me and some person that I was close to. Like, I am just this terrible person. God, who is going to believe me? I researched until I was overwhelmed. And, I was actually happy that there were words that I could express what happened. That, I was not a crazy person or anything like that. And I just kind of settled into, you know what, Lord? Nobody's going to believe me, but I have you. And I remember this, no one believing me coming alive after the friend that God had given a dream about me. I told her, some stuff, and she kind of had a little detective on the scene. And the detective was like, yo, you sure that your friend telling you the truth? My friend was like, yes, I sure she's telling the truth. One, my friend knew me. She knew my character. And even if, right, she was tempted to doubt me, I believe God gave her that dream for a reason. So she would know that what I was telling her was not a lie. And the detective was like, I can't find nothing on this man. Like, everything just above board. And I was like, God, you see what I tell you? You see what I tell you? Nobody will believe me. I gonna look like a liar. And I remember God was like, don't try to prove anything to anyone. Live for me and your character will shine through. Has that been easy? Absolutely not. Anyway, as I said, I researched till I became overwhelmed and I had to take a break because the more I read, it was like anger just bubbling up. I could not fathom how I got myself into such a demonic situation. Like, I could not fathom. And I was like, Lord, they're not coming back from this. Like, you need to tear him off the face of the earth. He gotta go. This man is a devil. This man is a walking, talking devil. He gotta go. I was just so angry. But, eventually I would give the pain and everything to God. It wasn't easy. I would give it to God. And I knew for a fact that I couldn't help myself. It wasn't an option. I needed God because this thing was highly spiritual. Only him could unravel me, and only him, meaning God, could heal me. So I was like, look, God ain't got a clue. I need you. Please help. And God started to lead me step by step in, how to respond to this guy. But honestly, I wasn't always obedient. Sometimes, like, my emotions did get the best of me. And each and every time I would be so upset with myself and I would go back to God. And God would he wouldn't like scold me or anything. It would just be like teaching points. It would be teaching. And that began my walk really in terms of being obedient. Because I didn't know nothing about being obedient to God. Clearly not. So God started to minister to me, started loving me back to life. I was in a place where I couldn't really believe anything good about myself. I thought that I deserved this because I was a terrible person. Yeah, my self-worth, my self-esteem was not, but nobody would get around people. I was still like plaster on a small, but I did my best at that point. Because it was COVID as well. I didn't have to really interact with a lot of people like physically, right? But what I didn't know was that God was being so patient with me and equipping me because he foresaw that in months I was going to be in a court battle. And this time, it wasn't with one narcissist or a covert narcissist. In the previous video, I talk about this kind. My God. God knew that I was going to come up against this kind of over wicked, demonized individuals. And he had to do a quick work in me. Like, Yes, healing takes time, but he had to get me from a place of, listen, daughter, get up, get up. We got a work to do, and I'm going to use you to stand before these people to speak for me. So, ain't no time to be sulking. Get up, get up. I was physically out of race control. Me and my daughter, God had gotten us out. And the strategy that God had given me, I remember this. God had given me the ministry of shut your mouth. That was hard. Shut your mouth. And every time I open my mouth, I would just get in trouble. Takia, shut your mouth. Be silent. Don't say anything. If he say A, you don't need to say B. Shut your mouth. Ray knew the only way that he could try to exert some type of control over me or inflict pain and punishment, which he said out of his mouth that I must be punished, was to use our daughter. That was the only way. But what he didn't bargain for is that while I love my daughter, the process that God was taking me through, I can't even hold on to my daughter. My daughter could not even be an idol for me. I had to get to the point of, if this child got to go, she got to go. I got to be obedient to God, because I said, God, I don't know how I would get out of this thing. It is only you. So whatever instruction you give me, I have to follow. Right? So Ray went out. He hired an attorney more wicked than himself. My goodness, it's like the devil incarnate. And I ended up with a Pharaoh for a judge. My goodness gracious. But this time, I was not coming from a place where I was so, who am I? What am I doing here? I was a daughter of God, and I was following God's leading in whatever he wanted me to do. And when I tell you, God gave me a bravery that I never knew I had. He gave me a bravery I never knew I had. But that'd be a testimony for another time. I had to stand up by myself before a group of wicked, demonized individuals and say, thus says the Lord. I could have never done that before. I was too afraid, right? And even though it got to a point where they stole my daughter, I'm going to say it straight, so stole, because they're thieves operating in lies and deception. I am fully persuaded, and I know my experience with God. I know what God has said to me, and I know that as long as I obey him, I have nothing to worry about. God has done such a mighty work in me to restore me from the evils of narcissistic abuse, and the work still continues, because healing is like in layers. And even though the abuse is continuing on in court, I am no longer that weak, vacillating girl needing love and approval from others. I got a Heavenly Father though that love me. Like, I am the apple of his eye, right? He continues to heal. He continues to restore. So what did I learn through all of this? First of all, the void in my heart from the time I was young was actually a God-shaped space that only God's love could fill. And that was what I was searching for all my life. True, unconditional love, and nothing could substitute for it. I mean, when I sat and I thought about how I basically slapped God in the face when he shut that door on that praying and fasting when that man broke up with me. I was like, God, I was like the Israelites. Give me a king. Give me a king. I want to be like other people. Give me a king. And I got Saul. You understand? Even though I did that, to see that God was so merciful. And it was like, my daughter in this situation, I can't leave her there. I ain't create her to be abused. I gotta get her out. To think like, how could God love me so much to do that for me? You know, people talk about, contemplate on the cross. I'm a very visual person. And yes, I know Jesus died on the cross and I thank him for dying on the cross. But this situation became the cross for me because I saw it was like the love of God came alive. Even though I had such a skewed perception of the Father, like this fire breathing, I experienced the God of true love. I did not experience a God that was, I told you not to do that. No, you're in trouble. I did not experience that. Nights I was in my bed crying and God showed up for me. He did not sling my sins. He did not sling my mistakes in my face. God literally just comforted me and soothed me with his word. It was in me reflecting and thinking back on my actions. I was able to realize my mistakes and confess that, Lord, I am so sorry for how I have hurt you so bad. That's one. Two, I learned that I can hear God's voice. It's not delegated for holy people. God wants to have a real living relationship with me. And he doesn't want me facing this life just blind and alone. And, everybody's relationship with God is not the same. Some people may hear God speak audibly, in different ways. Primarily, God speaks through his word. That's what it is for. But I tell you, I can't really explain it. But when God speaks, you are going to know. There are times he had to speak to me, outside of myself. And not from saying don't read in the Bible. For whatever reason, he is God. He could speak however he wanted. But I learned that I can hear God's voice. I also learned that I had a lot of unhealed childhood trauma that needed to be addressed. I had to go back to the foundation and allow God to unpack and dig up, uproot, and basically go back to basics. I had to come to learn the truth about, who God is. Something else I learned, I had made marriage and family an idol to the point where I didn't trust that, God, would give me the desire of my heart. He had closed the door, but I forced it open because I had idolized not just marriage, I had also idolized Ray. And God said, thou shalt have no other gods before me. I learned what spiritual warfare is. I learned Ephesians 6 in a different way. Because when you're dealing with narcissists, there's real spiritual warfare. I also learned how to be more compassionate and not being so quick to judge. You got to judge not by appearance, but righteous judgment. And that means going and asking God, Lord, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm hearing. But can you show me the truth by your Holy Spirit? If these things to my physical senses are the true story. You don't know a person's story. I was walking around with a mask for the majority of my life. And it was literally one person that she came to me. She had asked, Takia, how are you? And I gave the conventional answer, I'm fine. She said, okay, and she went along. And when I got by myself, she came to me. She looked at me. She said, tell me the truth. How are you? Somehow I knew that she was being genuine, and I brought on. I told her how I was. And she said, I could see it in your eyes. And the Holy Spirit has been impressing on me that I need to pray for you. So unless you have that connection with God, you can see people going ahead. You will see masks and will not know that there's something more. So I learned to be more compassionate and not be so quick to judge. Now, on to what I gained. And I'm going to end off here. I remember telling God, I don't understand it, but I thank you for what I had been through. What I thought was my biggest loss was my biggest gain. God had to move out something that was anchoring me. God brought friendships in my life that are some of the most beautiful, genuine friendships that I have experienced. Friendships where I could be so vulnerable and vice versa. Friendships where, yes, I could vent and say how I feel, but then these friends can be like, when we go into the throne room, we need to pray. Friends that will turn down their plates and fast for me and with me. Friends that will not gossip behind my back. Here, like chatter and, stuff like that. I mean, real God ordained friendship. And it came from me being obedient, because the majority of these friendships, I mean, they're not a whole set, but the majority of them, they were strangers to me. I didn't know them from Adam. And it was like God just said, I need you to reach out to such and such a person. And it's like, huh? Not knowing God was connecting me to the type of friendships that he needed me to have. I learned how to pray. And I don't be like, Lord, thank you for this day. Forgive me of my sins. And, I mean, pray. I learned how to pray. I learned, and I'm still learning how to be vulnerable and open with God. I learned a lot of skills that I never knew that I had. I got my voice back, confidence, my smile. I remember for a long time, I was telling God, I don't genuinely smile. Like, I want my smile back. And one day, I didn't even realize. I looked up one day and I'm like, yo, I have been smiling all week. And it is a genuine smile. And my daughter even told me one time, Mommy, I like when you smile. And I'm like, so I don't smile all the time? She said, no. So it's like, even behind my fake smile that I would put on just to hold things together for her, it was like she was seeing behind all of that. And best of all, I gained a hunger and thirst for God in a way that I never experienced before. And I just want to encourage. I know this testimony has been a bit long, but I needed to tell it. And it's not even all. I try to cut out so much. I just hope that this encourages somebody who may find themselves in a narcissistic relationship, or even they may be on the other side of it, but still feel so beaten down and all of these different things. I'm going to tell you what God told me in February 2020. God is not done with you. He has got a plan, and this is just a part of it. What the enemy thought was going to destroy you is what God is going to use to push you into your purpose and fit you, to train you to have a character for heaven. So, with that, I genuinely hope that you were blessed. It has been nice talking to you, even though, live or whatever, but yeah. So, I'll see you soon, I guess. Bye.